Hello viewers, welcome to your weekly State of Affairs program here on QTV. I'm your host Aliou Cissé, and as usual I'm here with my co-host Mr. Modou Mbodj. Mr. Mbodj, good to have you on the program.
Absolutely, I'm glad to see you today.
Well, that's Mr. Mbodj. Well viewers, this week our guest is someone who's an economist, a politician one will say, because he had wanted to contest in the last presidential election but was disqualified by the Independent Electoral Commission, and later went on to endorse the PDOIS party. But also we saw in the last parliamentary election he contested under the PDOIS-led alliance in the Nyamina East constituency, where he lost to the winner. But then, that hasn't in any way silenced him. He continued to comment on issues of national concern. And this week, he will, will be discussing about the current state of affairs of this country, but also look at the possible solutions, but not only the solution, but how do we do it, the methods, which is very important. And this guest is nobody but Alhaji Mamadi Kurang. Mr. Kurang, welcome to the State of Affairs program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cissé. Pleased to be here with you, and Modou, pleased to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
To start with, could you just share with us your assessment of the current state of affairs in this country?
I think obviously if you want to assess the current state of affairs in the country, you would have to look at it possibly in different dimensions. You can look at it from the economic point of view, the political point of view, and also the social issues that are going around. From the economic point of view, obviously right now we are experiencing inflation at a very high level that seems to be unabated. It's on the increase in terms of prices of general goods and services in the market. And obviously from the political point of view, we have got still carried overs from the first term of the presidency of Adama Barrow in terms of the fact that it was a transitional government. And by and large, it's still a transitional government because some of the promises of transition are yet to be fulfilled, such as the Third Republic, ushering in the Third Republic with a new constitution, the changes as well as the restructurings that we are expected to see in the security sector, in the civil service, and in the public service, and also in the economic institutions. These are all carried overs from. So we're still looking at these things as incomplete work in progresses. Socially, obviously, the state of affairs in the country, we could look at it. The major issue is the people, the citizens are feeling kind of jittery in terms of the security level, the increase in our perception. The statistics of the police may say something different, but the public perception is that security is a concern in terms of armed robberies seems to be on the rise. So I think these are some of the issues. There are also health issues that people are very concerned with the recent disaster
AKI.
of the AKI. It's a very major concern. The agricultural sector, I'm just from the provinces yesterday. Farmers are very worried, right? Obviously, they know the fertilizer issue have come and gone. Not yet gone, come, but still here with us. But what they are more concerned with is what is going to be the prices of the goods, for example, peanut, right? Last year, it was about $28 per kilo. And in the increase in fertilizer, there is a worry that the cost of production have gone up. And it is suspected that the market price would respond, which comes from the government. So these are the big issues. Education, obviously, is a continuous issue. People are concerned with the quality of education, particularly at the secondary or the primary level. So I think this is a summary of some of the issues.
And now let's look at the economy. We all know we are still trying to recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Gambia is not alone as far as the impact of the pandemic on the economy is concerned. Yeah. What do you think should have been done in order to address the impact of the pandemic on our economy? Because you once said, and I quote, you said our economy is on a life support.
Yeah, the pandemic we know was what we call in economics major shock. It was a major shock for the Gambia because it affected us in a number of ways, and most recognizable among that was that the tourism industry, which we depend on so much, was completely devastated by the pandemic. And I think, people in the industry would still admit that the tourism industry is still on its knees since after the pandemic. So this is one of the major areas, and we see this reflected in so many other economic variables, economic areas in the country. We see it reflected in the rate of unemployment on the increase since the pandemic and not going down in any way. And we see it in the effects on the dalasi, because the tourism industry is a major source of foreign currency. So if the tourists stop coming, well, foreign currency basically stops coming. And as a result, we see the pressure on the dalasi is much, much higher within the past couple of months or, a few years. So, and these are issues which the government, I think different countries all over are actually resorting to see how, to address this in so many ways. Tourism is a very dynamic industry. The tourist market, there's a different target markets. I know that we have a low level market. The bulk of our market in the tourists is the low spending tourists, and the government would really have to look at how to diversify this market, into ecotourism and other markets that we have traditionally not sourced before, to see how to maintain, because we know that there are some countries actually affected by the pandemic, but immediately right now they have recovered because they have tried to see how to manage with the tourist industry.
I mean, before I bring in Mr. Mboj here, I mean, you've talked about what you think government should do. I mean, just last month, I mean, you had the president who was at the National Assembly where he delivered the State of the Nation address, where he tended to address most of these issues. I mean, what's your take on that address by the president? Or if you were in his shoes, how would your State of the Nation address sound like?
I have listened to the State of Nation address of the president, and I just echo one of the comments of National Assembly member Suwaibu when he said, Suwaibu Ture, when he said, well, there is nothing new. And in fact, what happened is what really has been happening is a collation of the comments from the different ministries that we have been seeing over time, put together and given to the president. And really, between one State of Nation address and another State of Nation address, there are what we call dynamics. Things have changed. And then obviously there are also issues which are very urgent, that needs to be given the urgency. They are not normally, you would say, normal ministerial or departmental issues, but they are issues of the moment. At the time of his address, I think flooding in the country was a major issue at that time, and the issue of obviously fertilizer. And flooding, I don't think it was thoroughly dealt with by the president's thing, and it is a present danger and also a possible future danger. So what people wanted to hear from the president in terms of flooding was that, well, this is what is happening. This is exactly what we are doing. Not only that, but this is what we are doing to avoid this from reoccurring in the future. And this is how we are preparing, in order to deal with this, because we see Banjul is a major victim of the flooding. And, yes, they try to do some PR issues tucking here and there, but people want to see real action. Banjulians want to know, for example, is this going to happen again next year when it rains again, which is just about maybe technically 6-7 months away? So is it going to happen again? And, in the other areas, in the combos here, where it happened again, we see some demolition exercises that took place. People tell that these are just reactionary things. What exactly, in the broader prospect of things, the physical planning, the Ministry of Physical Planning or the relevant ministry, what are the strategic measures that are being made by the government to look at some of the risk areas within the country, to see that these risk areas are assessed as flood areas, and to take measures to avoid this in the future? Because
one will say some of these things are not man-made. I mean, climate change and all those things are responsible. I mean, we've seen in other countries where, I mean, is it Palestine or Pakistan? We have seen a similar incident there. Yeah, so will you in any way blame the government for the floods?
The water coming is not man-made. That's true. Yeah, that's from the Lord. But how prepared we are or how unprepared we are is actually man-made. So if you have a department of physical planning, and at this moment in time, every government, if you are a flood area or if you are a risk area, you would have to carry on your continuous assessment and make some real moves to show the population that, because we know that what happened with most of the flood is that the waterways, where natural waterways are there, in Gambia is a water country, and water tends to always find its way by force. So if development planning is done, and this is not really planned, as we could see from the conversations that we had, some physical planning was not involved until when the flood comes. I don't think that should be that's a reactionary. There should be a more proactive. There should be a general assessment of particularly the urban areas, which tends to be highly increasing and highly populated. There are a lot of risk areas in the combos here. I think there should be a strategic analysis with this. If the government don't have the capacity, they need to look for the capacity to be able to do this and come up with some real long-term plannings, because we are not sure that if we say it's a natural disaster, it's not man-made, then when it will come again, you've got to be prepared for it.
Mr. Mboch, you want to come in?
Yes, Mr. Kurang, thanks for coming. You've laid the global context very well. The inflation we have is all over the world, isn't it? And of course, the knock-on effect on tourism, tourists are not coming and the like. So I wonder, how much would you say that the government contributed to this tableau of problems you've just presented? The global context is there. Yeah. What is the contribution of the government?
Okay, I would not be able to give you a percentage, but I can give you my view of it. In terms of the tourism, what we saw is that nobody is responsible for the COVID situation. But again, what we are saying is, how did you respond to the COVID situation when it eventually comes? And the only thing we can do is to assess a government's performance is to do some benchmarking. And we have to really compare you to other countries and see how they responded, right? And compare it to how people responded around the world, and compare it with the same thing with the inflationary process that's happening.
Okay, with the COVID first.
Yeah.
This comparison.
Yeah.
So which country would you compare Gambia with and say that, this is what we should have done? Where's your comparison here?
Well, with the COVID, I would say Gambia, if you are a tourism concentrated country, look at other tourism concentrated countries like Thailand, Singapore, Rwanda, you understand, and see even in Ghana, for example, they have come up with special packages, right? Ghana, they had this thing of returning of the black Americans, and the COVID did not deter them. They even push it further. Visit Rwanda is visible. But
all of them, their tourism suffered.
Yeah, their tourism suffered.
All across the world, tourism suffered. The numbers suffered.
It suffered, but the governments did not relent in projecting the international image of the country, right? And keep on promoting it. I mean, Gambia is not visible internationally.
But they will tell you that they've been doing that. Talk to the Ministry of Tourism, Muhammad Ba. They're all over the place talking about the investments they've got.
Destination Gambia.
But we need to see it. We need to see it. It needs to be visible. You look at Visit Rwanda. You just need to watch the premiership, and Visit Rwanda is there.
But isn't that the key?
Ghana, you need to watch CNN.
Absolutely. But the geographical areas, the specificities of our situation, I'm not sure why you should expect what's happening in Rwanda to also happen here. I'm not sure. Some of these things are more contingent than universal.
I'm holding the geographies and the geopoliticals constant, and I'm looking at government strategies, because that's what we have control over. I think when you want to assess, you have to look at variables that you can control and those variables that you cannot control. We are Gambia, and we are Gambia. We are located in the west coast, western west coast of Africa. That's why we cannot change that.
So this what variables could you have changed? What variables do we have control
Yeah, that's why I mean the marketing variable, the international visibility is one. Two is we just have a recent issue. In the airport, the tour operator saying that, well, we're not going to fly in because you are not prepared on the ground. This is a control variable. You should have been prepared if you are expecting that it's coming in. I mean, the road from Westfield to Banjul, you go to so many countries, even in Liberia here, right? You see that the grass is green, but it's immaculately cut. This is controllable. How many young people we have in this country that could do that? Well, last weekend or a few days ago, I saw the soldiers doing it. Why didn't they do it? Right, and there are other people who could do it without the soldiers. That is about first impression. Make a beautification of your environment.
Can we say that these are managerial issues as distinct from policy issues?
Yeah, but
regarding tourism, yes, the managerial stuff. Which body on the ground is responsible? We have lots of questions to ask.
But the government,
you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
the managerial shortcomings, one thing. Yeah. The policy elements as well, quite another, isn't it?
Yeah, but the government has control over both the policy and the managerial. At the managerial level, a government is a complete embodiment, right from the grassroots all the way to the top of the decision-making process, the cabinet. Then you have the departments, the Department of Environment, you have the Board of Health, the cleaners, etc. The government has a whole toolkit of the process. So you cannot say it's just policy, not money. They have a complete control, right? They work with the area councils, etc. They have their own Ministry of Health, etc. These are all taxpayer investments. So when we say make the country look presentable, we think that the government, it is the Ministry of Tourism. I'm sure they spend money on issues that they could easily clean the environment, just for the tourists to have a nice view when they come.
I mean, you talk about the issue of visibility. You're talking about the Premier League. You say visit Rwanda. In the case of the Gambia here, I mean, what will you point to as products that you think can really attract people to visit the country? Because that also matters. The products.
Exactly. Apart from the environment, the products. The infrastructure is very important, is one, because when tourists don't want to be bogged down with your traffic system. You understand? If you are doing the roads, do them quickly and efficiently. Don't waste time. Two, you've got to invest in the tourism infrastructure itself. Well, we know that it is not government's business to build lodges and ecotourism, etc. But it is within your purview to be able to come up with appropriate strategies to make the environment conducive for the private investor to come in and put in money. This is with it, and the government knows that, because that's why they have the Ministry of Tourism Promotion, not tourism, investment, GAIPA, the Investment Promotion Board. Yeah, these are tools. Actually, one of our main investment areas, apart from agriculture, is tourism. So if you have an investment board, well, they got to be set some targets, some specific targets, and we need to see these targets, and we need to see how far they have gone to achieve these targets of bringing in foreign direct investment into the country. We cannot just set up a whole department, and be paying it taxpayer money, and then we are not holding them to account.
So you think there are no targets for them? Do you know for certain that there are no targets?
I don't know, but what I want to happen is that I want these targets by the government to be communicated to us, that we have this target to bring in this amount of foreign investment.
Have you been to their website to find out whether they've actually communicated? This is one of the ways of communicating these things, to upload things on the website. Have you done so?
Well, the government should communicate to me while I'm lying on my bed.
We're still looking at the economy. I mean, you were talking about tourism, because tourism plays a key role in our economy, contributing 25% to our GDP. I just want you to tell me, as an economist, I mean, looking at our current realities, I mean, what does the future of our economy looks like?
Well, the future would depend on some key things. I think we are still a largely agricultural dominated population. And I think one of the key things that the future will depend on is to what extent can we feed ourselves? Because the future economic outlook, food prices is a major threat to the standard of living of people. And that, to a large extent, agriculture never goes out of date. no matter how much the technological advancement, agriculture can never go out of date. The United States of America and most of the Western powers still have their foodstuffs. They call them strategic reserves. Assuming that they go into some emergency or unforeseeable disaster happens, they have to be able to feed their population at least for a certain amount of time. That shows you that agriculture never goes out of date. So to what extent we feed ourselves depend on to what extent the government invest and seriously invest in the agricultural sector. And I am not seeing the current government come up with a long-term vision. All right. Well, we have heard about a number of visions in the National Development Plan and the renewed version, but we need to see this going into place. Right now, it's not just about the government saying they want to invest. The strategic partners are the farmers. They need to see that vision, and they need to feel the effects. I think this will determine what happens to The second thing is what we call in PDOIS building the productive base, right? It's not just tourism and agriculture. The productive base of the country has to grow. There are some natural industries that could easily be encouraged in Gambia that, would depend on local resources and material. People will tell you that the Gambia used to produce processed groundnut peanuts into peanut oil. Instead of this industry going into further into producing some peanut cakes, peanut chocolates, etc., it actually is gone back, not vertically but downwards. So really, the productive base of the country is still a largely tax-based economy, and tax-based economy are very fragile. Right? What makes them fragile is they are more prone, right, more sensitive to global shocks such as the COVID, such as, wars that we may have in other countries. Those kind of global shocks affect tax-based country a lot. If you ask our tax economy or people in the tax department how much money they lost because of the tourism industry going down, it will be a significant drop, right, pressure on the tax income. So you can only take care of this if you produce.
Mr. Kurang, we've been hearing about this for a very long time, since independence.
Yes.
How do we add value to these basic commodities and that sort of thing? And the fact that it hasn't really happened anywhere so far, African continent. You have some that have made certain strides, but consistently to a level, sizable level, it really hasn't happened yet. Every progress forward, and then suddenly you have to backslide 2 steps forward, 3, 4 steps back, that sort of thing. But I wonder, you mentioned PDOIS, and in fact, upon your disqualification, you gave them your support, you endorsed them. And this economics bit, I have all these schools of thought. You will help me here. You're the economist. The liberal market economics, neoliberalism, which we have now. You will hear about the socialists. You'll hear about the Marxists, the Chicago school. You have all of these different schools. Are you a socialist?
You see, we in our press conference recently, the Honorable Khalifa answered that question very clearly when he had a debate with Fall, and Fall was saying, I'm a capitalist, so you are sort of a socialist. Those things don't matter. A U.S. president, for example, you cannot even know what a Democrat may call himself a Democrat, but he's got so many socialist policies.
But
in him,
wouldn't dare say that he's a socialist because of the political
because of the
political.
But really, so that shows you that what really matters is not what acronym or title that we give the politician, socialism. What matters is what policies do you have to move or solve these problems that we have on the table. Right now,
but politics belong to categories. This is what I'm trying to bring out.
That's why
these are all traditions of thought.
Yeah, when we go to school, right, we learn schools of thought. But that's our schools of thought in schools. Yeah. In practical life, we solve practical problems as politicians. So you got to ask yourself, what are the practical problems we have in the Gambia right now, and what solutions do they need? And when you take those solutions, for example, when we say that number one, we need to build a productive base. Number two, we need to think of some sovereign fund investment. Nobody is actually, to call this thing socialist or capitalist. Because when you go to Singapore, you find one of the most successful sovereign funds in the country.
Yes.
But when you go to Norway, you find it there. So if somebody else who belongs to the PDIS or any party says it, you cannot call him a socialist, because this has worked in some of the most free market economies in the world.
That's precisely the point. So in fact, you said Singapore. That was what Lee Kuan Yew said.
Yes.
He said market economics, not the socialism of Nyerere or Kaunda.
No.
He said it at the Harvard lecture.
Yeah, and he also said that this African idea of we belong to the socialist bloc or we belong to that bloc is not practical for him in Singapore. So when he met the African heads of states, he said to them, you have problems. You know your problems. Solve your problem. Number one, you have a corruption problem. There is nothing like a socialist or capitalist system. Go and solve the corruption problem. Yeah, you have a problem of unemployment. Create jobs for the people. You got to find ideas.
How do you do it? It's always been the problem.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
In Singapore, look at how they did it. Right, they have this in Sebang. Right, I've been there several times. They have this small cottage industries, and really, this is every human race.
But before that, education level was at 89-90%. We are what? Literacy 50%. Different realities. We're dealing with different realities.
That's why I'm saying you basic education. Every country has to solve education problem. But when people go to school also, right? We as governments have to determine what exactly they learn in school, right? In terms of the curriculum and so on, and give them the resources to be able to deliver. When they come out of school, we have to create a field on which they will operate. So what I am getting at is every human being, every race, every country has a crop of people that are entrepreneurship in nature. And this is evident even within the time of Lenin and others in socialist country. They realize that actually the Russians and so on are very enterprising people. The Cubans are very enterprising people. So at the end of the day, the natural instinct, you know, for Adam Smith, the natural instinct, right? You get your morning bread, not for the benevolence of the baker, right? But for his own desire to satisfy himself. The human being is naturally enterprising in nature. And as Muslims and Christians, we believe actually it's the same. So there is no religion actually that's against the entrepreneurship spirit. So what a government needs to do is to groom that and provide the environment in which the citizens can flourish. In our country here...
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Yeah. I like that idea. Yeah. And quite fortunate that actually you've mentioned religion here. This can demonstrate the point I'm trying to get at. I once observed to somebody that when you look at the statistics, when it comes to religion, we are among the most religious people. Consistently 100%, 90, whatever, 100%. When it comes to corruption, why are we amongst also the highest?
The highest.
What is the relationship between my religion and my behavior, my attitude? So which brings
when you say we are the most religious people, I have to underline that.
Yes,
what determines that we are the most religious people?
My next point is
we look like. Maybe you can say we look like.
My next point is this.
Yes.
The fundamental point is this.
Yeah.
Ideally, what we should do, the rhetoric, that's one thing. But what we see actually people do on the ground, the structures. In other words, maybe we should explore the relationship between individuals and institutions. We've been talking like this. The rhetoric since independence, we've not been able to make the right moves. Have we been looking in the right places for solutions? Have we been diagnosing what's going on here? Because all you've said is commonsensical, it's true. Since independence, how come we haven't managed it? What's been the drag?
Common sense is not common, the English people say. But you see, every society can be religious, and to be religious does not really depend on what we say. I believe that the English people are very religious people, right? And the American people are religious people, in their own way, and you have to give people a due regard for what they believe in.
Consistently in surveys, they show you in England, it's dropping. A lot of people
because the Arab
the reality.
Before even Islam, the Arab people have a saying that a society that is just, even if there is no religion, can live forever, can survive forever. A society which is religious but not just will always collapse. So you see, there is a difference between calling a society a religious society and calling a society a just society. Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. So what we want in this society is, let's have a just society. Let people get what they deserve. And let's forget about what religion they belong to. So in terms of what can we do, we have been talking about it. Yeah, and it's common sense. Of course, no, but what we politicians, right, and I believe you business people, we are all interested in what we do in terms of what society expected from us. That's the only thing we can hold people to task to. You are elected in government, you have made a promise, you have sworn to do this, we have to hold you to that. Isn't it? And you are a businessman, you also have your responsibility. Society have to hold you onto that. As a journalist, you are a journalist. We know, even if I don't know, but you know what are the tenets of your profession. Society must hold you to that. To hold power to account, isn't it? Is one of your responsibilities as a fourth estate within the government. So everybody plays a role. And we must hold everybody to the role that they are expected to play.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Mamadi Kurang, who is our guest for this week here on QTV State of Affairs. I am your host, Aliou Ceesay. We'll go for a short break, and when we return, discussion continues.
Espas Motors is the largest and most modern auto service in the Gambia. Espas Motors is the only authorized dealer in Chevy, Mercedes-Benz trucks, Mercedes-Benz buses, Kia, Ford, Futon Mini and Midi buses, Futon trucks. At Espas Motors, we have qualified professionals who use modern technology to diagnose and repair all brands of motor vehicles. Espas Motors services include auto sales, auto repairs, vehicle painting, availability of high-quality spare parts, towing services. We are reachable at any time. Call Espas Motors on 352222 353-4444 or locate us on the Bertel Harding Highway. Espas Motors.
Hello viewers, welcome back from that short break. You are watching QTV's State of Affairs program here on QTV. I am your host, Aliou Ceesay, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Modou Mbodj, and our guest this week is Mr. Alhaji Mamadi Kurang. I mean, let's now move on to something which is a concern as we speak, the issue of corruption. I mean, you've always talked about it. In fact, in one of your media interviews, you said, I will reduce unnecessary government expenses to combat debt, create income. You said this last year, 2021. I mean, what's your take on the way government is addressing corruption? Or do you think the government is fighting corruption?
Well, you know, like I said, we had a transition agenda, meaning a set of targets that we have set for this government as the people of the Gambia that they must implement. And one of them is to combat corruption, obviously with institutional reform and putting in the appropriate laws. Corruption, combat it, one of the key fundamentals is to have the appropriate legal system in place. And the government was supposed to have introduced an anti-corruption bill. And we're still waiting.
It's in the parliament. The executive has done their work.
Yeah.
It's now at the parliament.
Okay, fine. We're saying that
at the consideration state now.
We're saying that the executive should have done this much earlier. And we are also saying that, well, if we are grateful that they have moved one step to push it to the parliament, and hopefully the executive will work with the others in the parliament to make it pass. But apart from that, we know also that there are a lot of existing laws in place already that the government could fall back on to combat corruption in the country, particularly in the public service. And we have not seen this initiative from the current government, the Barrow government, in terms of identifying corruption and coming up with appropriate steps or legal, etc., to address and to take to account, people responsible for for this. So I think in terms of combating corruption for this government, there is still much to be desired.
But what should be the role of the opposition in this whole thing that is happening around the government and in the country? I mean, just next door, Senegal, we see how active the opposition is in holding the government accountable. Isn't it a bit different here in the Gambia?
Well, I think the opposition are doing their bit. They are calling out the government to combat corruption, and when the journalists or newspapers, etc., report certain cases, you see us coming out and then calling out the government to follow it up and see that something is done about those problems. And obviously, I think that's all what the opposition can do. The opposition cannot go and say, oh, director so-and-so in some department is wasting money and buying flashy cars. Let's go and remove him from his office. The opposition can't do that. It is only the government that can do that. And we are always asking them to take steps.
And talking about the issue of trying to reduce what you term as unnecessary government expenses, if you were to do that, what will you cut?
Yeah, this is a very, very because there are two issues there. One is about actually removing what is not bringing value for the country.
Such as?
Yeah, such as traveling of government officials, right? There was COVID, and for 2 years they didn't travel, and we were going on. So what changed? But immediately after the restriction is lifted, people are traveling for every conference, every week, everywhere. This is money. This is foreign currency. So we know that this is, yes, it may be important, but is it necessary? So many of it, I'm not saying all of it, but so many of it are not necessary. This needs a drastic cut, right? Also, in terms of the vehicles they buy, the government itself has admitted in the past that we are spending so much money on buying so many expensive vehicles. They even, we all know, try to prevail on government departments not to buy certain types of vehicles, right? And recalling even some of them during the time of my father and others from some of the departments. We know about these things. So the government itself is admitting that this is a problem. They try to talk about withdrawing vehicles and fuel allowances allocations to the others. So the government itself was admitting a few years ago that these are problems.
But isn't that a sign that the government is also equally concerned then, if they are coming out to admit that this is happening?
Yeah, but those policies did not continue. They were just giving some hype after a few days. They're not reflecting in the budget. So they're still the excess is still there. So this is one aspect of it. The other aspect of the expenditure side of the government is prioritization. Prioritization of, apart from cutting, there you also have to prioritize. There are some which are more important than others. Again, I was speaking to when I was conversing with Swaibu. He was telling me, okay, you know, the road, the OIC road network from the airport all the way to Sting Corner, a 6-lane or 4-lane idea that was there. But what actually we all know is that there was already a functional road there. You understand? Now, why would you take 2, 3, 4, 5 billion, right, from away in order to dismantle the road that was already there, right, and then bring in a new one that is taking you so much time and inconvenience for the public? Instead, there are so many connecting roads that were already in the plan that has not been charged, that could have ease the life for the people, make life convenient for people, reduce the traffic jam. But those connecting roads were not prioritized. So the argument was that the planners or whatever, the policymakers, could have prioritized those comments. So this is just an example.
What are these roads that you're talking about, connecting roads? Because we know that there are 20 new urban roads that are being constructed as we speak, even though, you know, I mean, at a very slow pace.
They have been talked about for 5 years and they are still not in the pipeline. So, but these are some of the things. There are so many connecting roads in the Gambia. If you come from Senegal, if you move from traffic light and you want to go to a turntable, right? There is only one way. It shouldn't be like that. We know that there are so many ways. I lived in Kersering before. Those who live in Kololi will tell you, right? Those who live in Kotu will tell you. There are so many ways around back roads that should have been paved and ready for cars to move from Turntable. Look at how many people live from traffic light, Westfield, take the Sukuta Road, go to up to Turntable, and Turntable. That small network of people, the number of people who live there with vehicles and cars, and you still have no connecting road. You either have to move from traffic light, take Senegambia up to Turntable, or move from Serakunda Market straight Sukuta way. It's not good for business.
But one will say these are things that could have been done by the previous governments. So you cannot entirely blame the current government for not having this connecting road, as you rightly mentioned, Mr. Kula.
Yeah, but we know about the current government's 1 billion pledge from the European Union and the world donors, and we also know about the funding of
these were just commitments. Do you know whether all those commitments were?
Well, we had that. They did not receive all. That's one. That's fine. But we need to know why they didn't receive it, right? I think a government. We know that a lot of it is about because if you make plans and you make promises to donors, and donors will hold you account for the promises. So you got to fulfill your schedules, your timing, and your promises in order for you to get the money. We also know that there was money from OIC. I don't know exactly how much. I wish they could tell us. They would not allow us to speculate. But we know that this money still now, we have not seen what tangible.
But the projects are ongoing, the OIC roads.
Well, they will be ongoing. They are still ongoing.
Mr. Kurang.
Yes.
When the World Bank publishes its economic update every year, 2022, you go through it, and they tell you from 2017 onwards 2018, the economy has been growing consistently until COVID-19 happened and the like. And yes, they sort of criticize, as it were, some aspects that government is doing. For instance, the office of the president also having so much the budget allocated to the office of the president, and perhaps not fighting corruption as we should. But generally, they sort of tend to endorse, give a positive tick for the performance of the government. How do you reconcile that with what you've been saying?
Yeah, as an economist, I understand what is happening. Because when the World Bank comes and they want to tell you, okay, 2017 to 2019, the economy has grown, what actually they're doing is actually desk economics. You know, they take the figures from you, right? And they see that, okay, Standard Chartered Bank, right, registered growth of $1 billion increase in profit, right? Coca-Cola company registered that much growth, right? So much, to company regards. But actually, we know that these are true figures. Yes, fine, and they will give you increase in economic activity. But what
is it always automatic? Are you questioning their methods?
No, listen to me. I'm not questioning. What I'm questioning is the conclusion and how you ask me how it reconciles with what I'm saying. What I am saying is, what we are interested in is what is the impact on our life. And we know in economics, growth, as it is measured and reported in the World Bank, they themselves will tell you, does not necessarily mean improvement in lives of the people. And I'm trying to explain to you why there is this disparity. That's why I'm giving you an example of increase in economic growth is because of obviously how it is measured. But it is not the same as improvement in the standard of living of the people. So, and this actually translates into what they call a 1% and a 99%.
The whole world, that's what we're talking about, the whole world here, aren't we?
Well, it's not the whole world.
But that's what they say, the whole world.
In some countries, it is
there are
40%, 60%. Right? If you go to Norway, you might find out that 75% of the population, right, do good.
Yes, there are
right?
exceptions, but when you look around the world, these are the exceptions.
No, but that is what politics is about. That is why we said we need to make changes and improvements and complaints and policy differences so that this gap between the few halves, right, and the major half-not can be closed.
Condensed.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I will ask you this, just one more question there, Aliu. Earlier on when we were talking about corruption, it's a very funny word, it's a very difficult, complex word. Let me just give you two scenarios. Know of a situation where a person called Red Cross needed the room to be fumigated because somebody who had contracted COVID-19 had been living. So the young boy came and said, oh, there's a charge of $3,000. The person said, I thought it was free. He said, no, you have to pay the $3,000. So the person insisted, give me a receipt. And then afterwards saw the boss, and the boss said, no, actually, we're not charging, got the person dismissed. I know of another situation where this person could work with a NAWEC employee, and they would manipulate, somehow tinker with the cash power, and somehow he will get less, and the person would give him that. They normally say that the point of failure in administration is at the bottom. So I wonder, is this legislative solution, as it were, plank? You were talking about the, we should have the anti-corruption bill come into act. We've got so many laws, who cares about them? That sort of thing. Is the legislative plank the most important fight in the corruption, given how it has pervaded every level of our society?
Well, it is not the most important, and yes, you could say the point of failure is at the lowest level,
the
but
bottom of the hierarchy.
But
yes.
they also say the fish rots from the head. So at the end of the day, corruption is, and we have this thing in management that they say you can delegate authority, but the responsibility still stops at you. The box, in Americans say, the buck stops at my desk. So where does it stop? At the desk of the president, and he has equipped himself with a team called a cabinet to help him deliver the promises that he gave people. So that's why cabinet, we say, has a collective responsibility, and they do a collective decision making. So you can have the laws which are the legal for the made by the parliament and for the judiciary to be able to implement them. But at the end of the day, the will of the executive, which starts with the cabinet, is paramount. So if in some country, in Singapore, when I went there, I was a student, and they told me in this country, right, corruption is given so much significance by the political class that at the time, there was even a minister who was caught accused of corruption, and before the trial, he committed suicide. So people get accused, and they are forced by the political class to resign because they. So these are all what culture the cabinet.
You talk about
a presidency. A presidency is not an individual, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we say president is individual, but presidency is more than one individual. The cabinet is, by and large, part of the presidency because they are not voted in. They are elected to help him deliver his mandate. So the culture that they create for themselves within that enclosure is significant. I would say is the most paramount factor in terms of fighting corruption.
But this is exactly the key, the structure and the individual. Earlier, it appears as if we are pointing to individual failings as our problems. Is it that, or is it more basic, more structural? People behave the way they do because of circumstances, don't they? So perhaps there is something deeper that we have to tackle before we may get the individuals that we want. How you live as a collective is how you live as individuals. It's a reflection, it's a reflection of the other. Isn't the problem deeper than just blaming individual failings? How do you say that?
I think you cannot just look at it from one point of view. I think it's a combination of both, because the mandate, when we talk about the mandate, there is an individual that is elected with a mandate to run the country for 5 years. And that is a social contract. And that social contract has got terms and conditions, which the individual is expected to adhere to and deliver to the people. So there is no way we can avoid holding that individual to account for the mandate which he has been sworn and voted in to deliver. But also there is a collective responsibility, right? At the same time that we have an individual responsibility and his team, the collective responsibility goes to every level of society. Like I said before, the media is part of that collective responsibility. The opposition has a role to play in that collective responsibility. The imam or the father in the church or the headmaster in the school also has a role to play. In the school, he has to make sure that the children mind is not corrupted when they are being brought up and they are being taught the right lessons about life. So there is both an individual element in taking the blame, and also there is a group or joint element in talking about it.
You talk about the role of the opposition. In this case, how can we have a viable opposition in this country?
Well, I think when we made changes in 2017, we are interested in having not only a good government, but in also having a viable opposition. And I think that's what we call the transitional agenda, to make sure that the democratic process stays in place, that there is a free media, that there is a rule of law, because without rule of law, you cannot have effective participation of the opposition. So to have and keep and maintain sound democratic principles, right, which we said has both individual and collective responsibility. A Minister of Health has some individual responsibilities as well as some collective responsibilities to deliver. The Minister of Justice, we expect him to come up and do certain things as the Minister of Justice, and also some collective things as a part of member of the cabinet. So we need sound democratic principles in this country, right, in order for us to have a viable opposition.
And let's now move a bit, to something which is very important. The TRRC, is done and dusted. The report was out. Implementation. As a commentator, as a Gambian, what's your take on the implementation?
I think generally a lot of us are feeling that the implementation is actually delayed because we need to see there are promises that the government made through the white paper to the population. And like I said before, we hold them account to what is agreed. The white paper is more or less like an agreement. We elected them and they promised to do this and that. So in that, we said justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done. So this is a process of our justice system. And people want to know, right, what did you promise? Where is the timeline for that? And how far have you gone at any point in time? We need to hear press conferences from the Minister of Justice. It's not just when the report is delivered, he gave one press conference and disappeared. No, we want him to come back constantly and keep on updating us about how far his government has gone to implement the recommendations and the white paper that they have delivered.
And on the current, you earlier, you mentioned about the acute kidney injury. These are all current issues that's a concern for so many people. What came to your mind when you heard about this incident? Do you think such should happen in this country?
No. What came to my mind, I was very concerned and devastated, and at the same time a little bit scared, like every other Gambian. We all get scared because you start to think like, oh, I bought a medicine yesterday. Did I buy the right one? So once you start thinking of your own risk and if risk to your family, then that you become worried. So every Gambian is worried because we're not just looking at the fact that 66 or more children died. We're also looking at how many could have died, or how many other medicines out there are actually not of the right type and really causing harm to the people without us knowing. So then we came to discover a lot of things during the conversation that's going on. We discovered that, for example, the tools and the laboratory technology that is needed to test some of these drugs coming into the country does not exist. And that was a shock to most of us and very disappointed. And we feel that the government should move very quickly to tackle that area. We look at the licensing system also, and we get worried because the license just seems to be like just like a business document that people can pass from one person to another for a fee, right? It's also a major concern, and I think the government is listening to that with some of the things that we're hearing, because this makes us very scared that things that we are taking in as medication can cause us harm because of loopholes within the system. So these are some of the concerns.
Thank you very much, Alaji Kurang. Well, with that, we bring an end to this week's State of Affairs program. Mr. Mboj, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's always a pleasure to have you on the audience. So I'm so will join us next week, hopefully. Once again, Mr. Kurang, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to the program. Do join us next week. Until then, bye-bye.